lección 10. ¿Tienes preguntas acerca de lección 9?
No.
Perfecto. Hoy vamos a repasar la forma de tú y yo, la tercera persona y la primera persona plural. Hoy vamos a aprender la última forma verbal, la tercera persona plural, la pronunciación de la letra ñ, y vamos a hablar de la migración y la aduana. Bien, Kaylee, ¿usas un lápiz o una pluma en clase?
Un lápiz.
Okay, so remember to try and give me a complete sentence.
Sorry. Yo, would I say yo in this scenario? So just usas un lápiz
So
in la clase.
You have to do something to that. Remember,
Uso,
usas is in the
uso.
question form of you.
Okay, so.
How do you change that to I?
So uso un lápiz in la clase. In clase.
¿Nadas en la piscina a menudo?
¿Qué significa menudo? Menudo?
A menudo,
A
together,
menudo? Together.
means often.
No, no nado en la piscina a menudo. A menudo.
¿Vives con compañeros de cuarto?
Compañeros de cuatro.
¿Qué significa?
Yeah, yes.
Compañeros de cuarto significa roommates.
Roommates. No vivo con compañeros de cuatro. So cuatro, like spelled like that would be like quarters.
Careful, you're saying the number 4, cuatro. This is cuarto.
Cuarto.
You're putting the R on the wrong side.
That's why. Okay. I'm like, why is this sounding weird when I'm saying this? Okay.
Cuarto can mean a quarter, and in this context, a room because it has 4 walls. So, yeah. ¿Vives con compañeros de cuarto?
No vivo con compañeros de cuarto.
¿Comunicas más por mensajes de texto o por llamadas telefónicas?
Comunico más por mensajes de texto.
¿Recibes muchas solicitudes de amistad en Facebook?
No, no recibo muchas solicitudes de amistad en Facebook.
¿Bailas algo?
Algo is
Something.
something. So dance something?
Yeah.
No, no bailo algo.
Y en la forma negativa vas a decir no bailo nada.
No bailo nada. Okay, no bailo nada. That's right.
¿Tomas café o té normalmente?
Tomo café.
¿Viajas por el mundo hispanohablante?
Hispanohablante.
Spanish speaking.
Spanish speaking. Sí, viajo por el mundo hispanohablante.
¿Vendes algo en línea?
Vendes is so do I sell together online? Oh, no vendo nada en línea.
¿Ayudas a los pobres?
Ayudas. ¿Qué significa ayudas?
Do you help?
Sí, ayudo a los pobres. Would I change that because it's plural? No, it's just because it's me. You're okay. Never mind. Answered that question.
un sacerdote católico reza el Ave María?
¿Qué significa sacerdote? Sacerdote.
Sacerdote is a priest.
So reza would be pray. El Ave María. So sí, un sacerdote. But what would I be changing? What am I changing?
You just, in this situation, you don't have to change anything because now
Okay.
we're in the third person singular.
Okay. So. Okay.
So in this activity, right? If we break this down conversationally, what we're looking at, the primary component conversationally is the verb, right? So in your answer, you're changing this over to uso. Right? Because we're going from you use to I use. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. So
when we go into the third person singular, typically you don't change anything, right? Because if the question is, does a priest pray?
Oh,
right? Here's our verb. So to answer, you just say, the only thing you have to change is either sí or no. Okay. And then you add the verb, reza, which in this situation, come on. Reza, blah, 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 right?
Oh, okay.
Nothing changes, right? Because
got it.
Because the third person singular is going to be the same in the question and the answer. Okay. Was that what you were confused about? Yeah, I didn't know how I was supposed to put it together. So. Yeah, that's okay. Okay. So would it be helpful to go back and review a little bit of this? Yeah, maybe, because I just am not, I guess, yeah, I'm convinced that I need to do something to everything all the time. Yeah. That's like, my brain is like, okay, what do you have to change here? You have to change something. What is it? So just from an observational standpoint, right? You're getting confused with verbs versus nouns. Yes. Right? So if I can just kind of spell this out, right? Verbs change on the person. For example, first person, hablo. Second person, tú hablas. Third person, right? What does yo hablo mean? I talk. What does tú hablas mean? You talk. What does él habla mean? He talks. Okay, perfect, right? So that's the verb that changes depending on the person. Now, nouns change, and I should put this: nouns, articles, and adjectives changed based on number and gender. Does that make sense? Yeah, so if I wanted like to say, color or something, like right. So if I have la mesa es blanca versus las mesas son blancas. Right? So that's number. So here we have to change mesa to mesas, la to las, blanca to blancas,
Okay. Okay.
because we're going plural.
Multiples. Okay.
And then an example of gender, right? So now going from feminine to masculine, el libro es blanco, los libros son blancos.
Okay.
So I think we were talking about this just a little bit yesterday, right? Don't confuse the verb with the noun.
Yeah.
Now, the primary component here in terms of this is going to be based on the noun itself, right? So mesa is always feminine. That never changes, right?
Yeah. Yep.
It has nothing to do with your gender, right?
That's just what it is. Okay.
Because I think yesterday you were getting confused.
If
it was your table or if it was my table.
Yes.
Right. And that's not what we were concerned about, right? It has nothing to do with anything else other than the noun itself, which can either be masculine or feminine. Mesa is 100% of the time feminine. You cannot say el meso, right? That is not a possibility.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's a thing. It's not like an adjective. It's not a descriptor. That's just what it is. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Now,
today, what I think you're getting confused with is conversationally, right? What is going to change?
What needs to change in that? Yeah.
So typically, conversationally, you've got different types of exchanges that can take place. You've got the yo y tú, which is going to make up probably 95% of your conversations for the next 3 months anyway.
Okay.
So what that looks like is tú hablas español. And the answer would be sí. Yo hablo español, right?
Okay.
So here what we're looking at is changing the verb from the tú form to the yo form, right? That's the conversational exchange that takes place. Remember, in Spanish, this is another thing that you're consistently confused about, is these words, right?
Yes.
They're optional.
Okay.
They're 100% optional. They're redundant in one sense, right? The main change, the necessary change that takes place is between the verb, okay? With the verb. You can say tú, or you can leave it out, right? That part, the subject, the person, is 100% optional.
Okay. So I could easily just say, sí, hablo español, because that's the same as saying like me, I.
Yeah. So like to just to kind of try and clarify here, right? It is 100% the same to say, (100% the same in Spanish. There is zero difference here between the two sentences. In my opinion, based on my experience of speaking with native Spanish speakers, they're typically going to leave that word out.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless they're trying to add emphasis. You know, one could make the argument it's redundant, right? Like in English, and I'll put that into comparison with you, right? We have to say it in English.
Yeah.
Because the verb doesn't change. We don't change our verbs.
Yeah.
we don't change our verbs. So in English, it's 100% necessary to specifically name the person that you're talking about, whether that's you or I or he or she, or, you know, using persons' names or talking about a thing like a table or whatever, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess when I'm trying to respond, I think of how I would respond in English and try to match that up 1-to-1, but that's not correct. That's not how it works.
Well, again, though, this is the thing, is it is correct. You can say, you know, in this, if what you're getting confused about is this word, you can say it. It's okay. Like, it's okay to say it. It's okay to not say it. Like, it's optional. It's 100% the same. It's my opinion, as somebody that's been speaking Spanish for about 20 years, that it's redundant. Right?
Yeah, you don't need it.
A native Spanish speaker would tend to leave that off unless they're trying to emphasize something.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Now, the other exchange, what you're just getting confused on right now, is now we're in the third person, right? Right. So here in the question, we've got the verb, él habla, does he speak Spanish, right? And in Spanish, it's the same in the answer. It's the third person singular. Perhaps one thing that might be confusing you a little bit, right, is in English, the structure changes, right? Because we have to use the auxiliary verb. Does he speak? Yes, he speaks, right? So we've got that little change in English. Spanish doesn't have that. There's no auxiliary verb. So in Spanish, you're just saying, he speak? Yes, he speak, right?
Okay, yep.
If that makes sense.
Yep, no, that does make sense.
You just change the intonation in your voice versus a grammatical or a structural change, right? Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, it's just practice. I just have to practice.
I mean, that's 100% what learning a new language is. It is, you know, there's coming to class where I teach you something, and then in your free time between classes, it's up to you to study and to practice, right? And, you know, I can only teach you. This is something I say to people. It's up to you to learn Spanish. I can only teach you, right?
Yep.
Believe it or not, the teacher, especially with my particular type of program, I play a very minimal role in your learning experience, right? If you want to learn how to speak a new language, it involves instruction, right? Whether that's self-study or coming to an actual class like this, where I'm physically teaching you the language, right? But between classes, you have to study. So what do I recommend for studying? Number one is the flashcards, right? Memorizing vocabulary. Because if we go back to a presentation like, oops, where'd my presentation go? So if we go, here we go. So what do I mean by memorizing vocabulary, and why memorize vocabulary? Why should you be spending a lot of time memorizing vocabulary? Your questions that you're asking me about right now have to do with the grammar, right? Where you're confused with this, you're confusing the, you know, what is it that you change? That's grammar. I'm not big on teaching grammar, right? I think most people can actually do better by just interpreting that on their own.
Yep.
So I say vocabulary, right? because this is the stressful part for your brain. This is the confusing part for your brain. Grammar is the hard stuff. Grammar is confusing and uncomfortable, right? But if you're using brain capacity to think about what these individual words mean, right? Because these are other things that you're having to do is interpret the rest of the sentence, the rest of the thing, right? If you don't know what clase means, if you don't know what in means, if you don't know what una pluma means, if you don't know what o means, if you don't know what un lapis means, this part is impossible. It's impossible, because now instead of thinking about that conversational exchange that takes place, oh, I think I lost my whiteboard. Instead of thinking about that conversational exchange that takes place, right? Which is this part of it. This is the conversational exchange that takes place, which is what you need to be thinking about. You're thinking about these vocabulary words, right? And that all of that is an impediment to speaking the new language, right? So, you've got part A, which is class or instruction, right? Number 2 is study. Primarily what I mean by study is flashcards. Memorizing vocabulary. Memorizing what these words mean. So that when you're in these activities, you're not using any brain power. You just know that table is mesa and mesa is table, and that's literally taking up 0 brain power. Right?
It just is. First, okay.
The next part is the practice, right? And this is also, this is me, right? These two are you. And it's up to you to do this, right? And in order to become fluent in a new language, that's what you have to do, right? So you're literally 2/3 of the language learning process, right? Practice, so study is essentially memorizing vocabulary. Practice is essentially talking to people, right? Or in this situation, doing the activities in the book. I give you the easy practice activities, which are to, for the most part, all of the activities in the book mimic real conversations, right? And so what we're trying to do is, like, in class, we do all this stuff live conversationally, and then at home you study, you internalize vocab, and then you fill out the activities, and all that is meant to help you internalize the language, right? But the actual language acquisition process, and this is different it's a different thing for everybody, right? It hits everybody in different phases. The best linguists in the world can't quite agree on exactly what takes place and when it takes place and how it takes place. There's a bunch of theories out there, but nobody can actually prove why, how, and like, if you look at kids, my son started speaking when he was like 6 months old. I know other people that have children that don't start speaking until they're like 3 or 4 years old. It happens. It's a question that linguists, right? Language scientists have pondered over for years. But in my experience, right, if you memorize the vocabulary, if you're filling out the activities in the workbook, and even better, in this situation, you have somebody that you can actually practice speaking with, right? If you're going to your boyfriend and saying, hey, all those activities in your workbook, you can actually just practice asking them to your boyfriend, right?
Out loud.
And that will even, that's even going to take it to the next level. And everybody has really different circumstances. So it happens different, like there's, everybody has a different learning pattern. Everybody has different exposure to the language. Everybody has different educational backgrounds. And just like anything, right? You've heard of people that are left-brained or right-brained or whatever it is. I'm convinced none of that stuff matters except for more of because at the end of the day, everybody learns their first language, and Spanish is just another language. There's nothing,
It's true.
there's nothing unique about learning a new language other than, this big combination of things,
Yeah, practice.
More important considerations, I think, are your own personality, right?
Mhm.
How shy versus how outgoing are you, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
How confident are you versus how embarrassed are you, or whatever,
Sure.
like how scared of making mistakes you are.
Mhm.
That, I think, plays one of the hugest roles.
I agree. Yeah.
All right. And then the other
Mhm.
thing is the exposure, having somebody to practice with.
Yep.
But at the end of, before any of that stuff is the time you actually spend, in my experience, the students that spend the time memorizing vocabulary are the ones that get it, and the ones that skip that step don't get it.
Just flounder. Okay.
Typically speaking, right? But
Yeah. Okay.
let's go. We could go back and review some of this stuff that I think will help you.
Yeah. That would be excellent. Thank you.
All right. So what is a conversation? It's a talk, especially an informal one, between two or more people in which news and ideas are exchanged, right? So the exchange that takes place looks like this, right? If you can imagine, this puzzle is your brain. So people tend to kind of think of an idea before they even think of the words that they're thinking of or whatever, right? So what do you think if you look at this picture, what idea does that bring to your mind?
Do you want this burrito? Do you like this burrito?
Yeah, do you want a burrito? Do you
Yeah.
like a burrito? I think what I have here is, do you eat burritos, right?
Okay. Yep.
So, you're kind of thinking of burritos, right? Talking,
Mhm.
do you want, do you eat, do you like, right? Any number of things could come in there. But the actual question you form is going to be, ¿comes burritos? Which means, do you eat burritos, right?
Mhm.
So you think of an idea, and like typically for the new language student, right? You're thinking of the idea, and then you're forming your question, which typically means you're translating the question, right, into
Yep.
Spanish.
Into Spanish. Yeah.
Now the conversation partner has to hear the question. That's step one. They have to form an idea in response, and then they have to actually conversationally respond. Sí, como burritos, right? Fluency happens when you're no longer thinking about this, right?
Yeah.
Which means you have internalized the language to the point where you don't have to translate it in your head, right?
Mhm.
So this is what the exchange is. The primary component of a conversation is the verb. That's the primary thing that needs to change. And this says most conversations are made of questions and answers. Learning how to change the verbs based on the exchange of information is how to start speaking Spanish, right? So conversation, you were just asking, oh, do I need to change this based on masculine or feminine or whatever? To greatly simplify this process for you, like seriously, to greatly simplify it, this is all you have to think about, is that verb.
Okay.
For the most part, I would say easily 80% of conversations are going to consist in only changing the verb, right?
Okay.
The rest of the content is going to be the same in the question and the answer, right? Whereas I often say the answer is in the question, right? Comes burritos.
Yeah.
There's your answer. That is literally your answer. The only thing you have to change is that verb based off of the person, right?
Okay. From you to I. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So to speak Spanish, you have to be able to ask questions. You have to be able to understand questions. You have to be able to form a response to those questions, right? So, I eat burritos, yo como burritos. If you're ever confused about what the verb is, just ask yourself, what's happening in this sentence? So, Kaylee, if I'm looking at this, I eat burritos. What's happening in this sentence?
What do you mean? What's happening? Like I'm eating. Eating is happening.
Eating. There you go. That's exactly the point I'm trying to make. That's
okay. So yeah, como. Yeah. Okay.
That's the action. That's the activity. Eating, right? And so once you identify that, that's the word you have to change, right?
Got it. Okay.
So in Spanish, these words change. Look, in English, our words don't change. Yo como, tú comes. I eat, you eat.
You eat.
If you look at that word that's in orange, in English, it doesn't change. In Spanish, it does, right?
It does.
So this is the conversational exchange that needs to take place in at least 80 to 90% of the questions, right?
Okay.
To address a little bit of your confusion around the nouns, right? Burrito, this is the masculine, feminine, singular, or plural thing. If you look at the exchange, it doesn't change, right? Burrito is masculine, always masculine. These are two females that are eating the burritos. That has no impact on the word burrito itself, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because that's not what's
so really the change that you're making is with the verb. So we've learned that we have three verb types, right? So we have our AR verb. So desear means to want. And this AR ending is kind of like the word to in English, right? We add that word to our verbs in the infinitive form or the raw form, right? Desear means to want means desear. Loosely speaking, that AR would translate to in English.
To two. Okay, yeah.
So your first step is to remove the AR ending, and you get what we call the base in Spanish, okay? So if our example is desear, without the AR, we get dese. So that's always going to be there in the answer.
Okay. And then I would change it based on me, you, him, they.
So based off of the person, right? So if I wanted to say I want, I add back an O. And if I want to say you want, I'm going to add back an AS because it's an AR verb, right? Tu deseas.
Okay.
So this is another part of the study that you can do in your own time, right? So like if this part is confusing you a little bit, just remember, what does desear mean?
To want.
What does deseo mean?
I want.
What does deseas mean?
You want.
Okay, good. What does ordenar mean?
To order.
How do you say I order?
Deseo, or whoa, ordeno.
How do you say you order?
Ordenas.
All right. What does tomar mean?
To drink.
How do you say I drink?
Tomo.
How do you say you drink?
Tomas.
What does reservar mean?
To reserve.
How do you say I reserve?
Reservo.
How do you say you reserve?
Reservas.
What does bailar mean?
To dance.
How do you say I dance?
Bailo.
How do you say you dance?
Bailas.
What does cocinar mean?
To cook.
What does I cook? How do you say I cook?
Cocino.
¿Cómo se dice you cook?
Cocinas.
¿Qué significa esquiar?
To ski.
¿Cómo se dice I ski?
Esquio.
¿Cómo se dice you ski?
Esquias.
¿Qué significa viajar?
To travel.
¿Cómo se dice I travel?
Viajo.
¿Cómo se dice you travel?
Viajas.
All right.
That made that, wow, whoa. That made so much more sense that way. That just, yeah, okay. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that made sense. I get it.
So, if, I can just kind of give you a very simplified version of this.
Okay. Because I think before, the thing that I had been mostly like focused on is the what is it called? Conjugation, I guess. Like, how does it change?
This is verb conjugation.
Yeah, but instead of thinking of it as what it means, I was just like, I know that when it's me, I change it to O, and when it's a two, I change it to as or ace or whatever, versus being like, I travel, you travel. That I just, in my head, I was just doing the swap versus relating that back to what it actually means, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, and like I said, this is a process that happens differently for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad, this is actually good that we got to spend some time together, just the two of us, because this gives me the opportunity to break it down, So we don't have to do this with everything, right? But one practice when it comes to verb conjugation, like, so you've got, all right, so we've got something that's called a grammar rule, and then we've just got something that's called meaning, right? So we've got a rule that AR verbs work like this, right? Where you remove the ending and add back o, as, right? That's what it sounds like you've been working on, right?
Yes.
But perhaps you haven't been necessarily paying attention to the actual meaning.
I've not.
Which is viajar, for example, viajar means to travel. Viajo means I travel. Viajas then means you travel, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So again,
my brain has not been doing all of that. It has just been simply, let's change it. What does it change to? What's the answer to that? Instead of,
now
more abstract.
Most Spanish teachers would tell you that the rule is the most important part. And I'm here to tell you that it is not. The meaning. My handwriting's bad in the first place. On Zoom, it's atrocious.
So hard. It's so hard to
But
do.
the meaning is the important part. Without meaning, without comprehension, you've got nothing, right? So one way that you can study verbs, right, is to make an individual flashcard, right? You can use Quizlet. I gave you the link to our Quizlet channel.
Yeah.
If that works, you can create these on Quizlet yourself. That's one way of doing it. If you prefer, you can go old school and get a 3x5, pack of index cards, where on one side, until you get to, you don't have to do this forever, but on one side, you write the word in English, and on the other side, you write the word in Spanish, right?
Okay.
That's the verb infinitive. You would do the same thing. Viajo, I travel.
I travel.
You travel. Viajas, right?
I like that. That's a good idea.
So you can make individual cards for each one of these things, because this is a little bit more natural, the way someone would learn their first language. We don't learn languages based off of grammar rules. This is not the way. There's no, and I know parents that are native Spanish speakers raising their kids to speak Spanish here. And I've observed them how, as a linguist, I spend way more time pondering these things when I'm at parties and stuff like that. Possibly imagine, right? But that's not, how do kids learn how to speak a new language? they learn it this way. They get a question and they answer the question, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I say 90% of your conversations are going to be like this, because it's no different than really the way a small child learns his or her first language, right?
Yeah.
So you could spend some time on this, right? Making individual flashcards, right?
Yeah, I just ordered a bunch more, so I have more. But okay, that's a good idea, because yeah, I've totally just been doing the swap.
Yeah.
Like, instead of thinking about what that actually means.
So you're going through and just saying bailar, bailo, bailas.
Yes.
Cocinar, cocino, cocina, right? And that's almost like rhyming, right?
Exactly.
Cocino, cocinas, viajo, viaja. Like if there is no meaning associated with it, it is not helping.
Totally. I totally agree, because that has been the thing. And then when I get to having to change it, it's like a lot. I'm like looking at the sentence and I'm like, okay, who am I talking to? How do I change it? Instead of just being like, okay, I know what this word means.
Right. So then you can come to an activity like this and you say, yo ordenar, ordeno. But if you're not making that connection in your head that what you're saying is I order.
Yes.
Right. Versus ordeno. And if you're just ordeno is just a random word. It's not, what we're trying to do is create these connections. And there are all these people that say, oh, you have to do this 100% in Spanish and blah, blah, blah. And no, there is no adult in the world that would not automatically try to translate this in their head.
Yes.
It just instantly learn how to think in the new language. Learning how to think in the new language, that's the part that I can't do for you. That's the part you have to do on your own. And it happens for everybody differently based on their personality, their learning style, their exposure to their language, blah, blah, blah. But one thing I can guarantee you, if there's no meaning, there is no forward movement.
At all. Poor Victor hears como se dice all day, every day. Every day.
Todo el día, todos los días.
Todos los días, all the time, just constant. So
So now let's do this activity, but then fill in the blank and then tell me what you just told me in English, so that we're creating that connection for you.
Okay. Yo ordeno un burrito. So I order a burrito.
There you go.
Tú tomas una cerveza. You drink a beer.
Good.
Yo reservo una mesa para dos. I reserve a table for two. Tú deseas postre. So you desire a pastry. Is that what that is? Dinner.
There you go. So ask me, ¿qué significa?
¿Qué significa postre? Why don't I know what that is?
Postre means dessert.
Dessert.
You were onto it with pastry. Postre. And there's a Latin root at play there. Post. Like, do you watch sports at all? What do they do after a game? They have a post-game show, right?
Okay. So after.
Because post means after.
Latin
for after. So post-game is the after show, right?
Okay.
What comes after dinner? Dessert. Postre.
Dessert.
Post dinner.
I like that. Tú bailas bien. So you dance well. You dance good. You're a good dancer. Bien is just good, right?
So it technically means well.
Well, okay. So I was right the first time. You dance well.
At the end of the day, if you say you dance good, you dance well. Meaning, I think is, here's grammar versus meaning, right?
Yeah.
Grammatically correct, bien. Bien is grammatically correct because it's an adverb, whereas bueno would be not grammatically correct because it's an adjective, and you're answering how do you dance? Well, that's a whole different conversation for a whole different day.
Yo cocino comida mexicana, so I cook Mexican food. Yo esquío poco, so I ski a little. Tú viajas mucho, you travel a lot.
Very good. Okay. So now let's take this to an ER verb, right? Comer means to eat. So again, verb conjugation, right? ER verbs, we need to remove the ER ending and we get our base, com, right? And so like com, it would be like the equivalent of eat, right? There's nobody associated with it, so we don't really know what's going on. If we want to associate I back with the verb, we add back an O. Yo como, I eat. If we want to associate to with the verb, we add back es. This time, ER verbs end with es to say you do something, right? So it's tú comes, right? So let's do the same thing. Comer. ¿Qué significa comer?
To eat.
¿Cómo se dice I eat?
Yo como.
¿Cómo se dice you eat?
Comes.
Okay. Beber.
To drink.
Muy bien. ¿Cómo se dice I drink?
Bebo.
You drink.
Bebes.
Leer.
To read.
I read.
Leo.
You read.
Lees.
Correr.
To run.
I run.
Corro.
You run.
Corres.
Okay. So let's do the same thing. Fill in the blank and then tell me what you just said.
Okay. Yo como un burrito. So I eat a burrito. Tú bebes una cerveza. You drink a beer. Yo leo un libro. I read a book. Tú corres en el parque. You run in the park. Tú leo la revista.
All right, try that again, because you didn't make the grammatical, the rule.
Tú lees la revista. ¿Qué significa revista?
Revista is a magazine.
Oh, okay. So you read a magazine.
And technically, just to be a little bit careful, la means the, it does not mean a, right?
Oh, the.
There's
okay.
There's a tiny little difference. So if we are trying to get this meaning instilled in you, right? There's a difference between la versus una in this, right? You read the magazine versus you read a magazine.
Okay. But if I wanted to say a magazine, I would say una revista.
Is
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yo bebo jugo. So I drink juice. Tú comes tacos. You eat tacos. Yo corro cada día. I run every day.
There you go.
Okay. This has helped. Just looking at these things as individual words versus just trying to change the ending to like get the thing right.
Right. You were missing the meaning, right?
Yeah.
At some point that will get internalized, but initially I strongly feel that you have to translate that.
Yeah.
Otherwise you don't know exactly what you're saying. And if you don't know what you're saying, you're actually not learning the language, in my opinion, right? And conversationally, you could get yourself into a problem, right?
Oh, totally.
Right?
And yes.
I say, me das $10,000, right? So you're focused on the verb das. So to say I give is doy. So you answer, sí, te doy $10,000. You have no idea what I just asked you or what you just said, but what you just said is you're giving me $10,000.
Jeez. See, but it's different, Draco.
But you got the grammar right.
Yes.
Now, the final step to this conversational component, right, is now this is when we're doing this type of activity, we're kind of drilling something into your head. It's like doing push, you go into the army, and what's the first thing you do? You do a whole bunch of running, a whole bunch of push-ups, right? Why when you actually go out to a battlefield, you're actually not push-upping your enemy to death.
No.
Right? But it's the discipline, right? It's the training that they're getting at, right? And then sometimes they do actual live drills where they, play with paintball guns and
Yep.
go out and shoot each other with paintball guns, and
Mhm.
Now, so this is now, let's put the conversation into practice, right? So we already talked about the verbs being the primary component of the conversation. So just ask questions and answers. You just have to be able to switch back and forth between the two and you. And this is honestly, like I said before, it's going to come up in 90% of your conversations. I would imagine over the next three, because like, let's imagine, who are you speaking Spanish with? Your boyfriend. What do you and your boyfriend talk about? Hey, what do you want to do this weekend? Do you want to go to the movies? Do you want to go to the bar? What do you want for dinner? Right? What are all of those conversations based in? Tú y yo, you and I.
Yeah.
Right? So what that looks like is this. ¿Deseas una galleta? Sí, deseo una galleta. Do you want a cookie? Yeah, I want a cookie. Right? Simple. There's your exchange, right?
Yeah.
The rest of the content stays the same. You're responsible for changing the verb. Another change you might say is either sí or no at the beginning, right? Sí, deseo una galleta. No, no deseo una galleta if you're in the negative form. So here are verbs, right? So what's the first step? Identify the verb in the conversation. I've simplified all of these for you, so it's just the first. Right? There's obviously more complex sentences and questions you can make, but to keep it simple. Now, again, first, before you answer the question, make sure you know what it means. Right? So let's do this just to simplify it. I'm going to ask you a question. Tell me what the question means, and then try and answer it, right?
Okay.
Sorry, I gotta move my thing here. Right? Oh, come on, computer. There we go. ¿Comes los burritos?
So you eat burritos?
Okay, good.
The burritos?
So it could mean you eat. However, just to point this out to you, this question mark would be like saying do, right?
Do, okay.
Because it's a question, in English, we say, do you eat burritos, right? So if you're truly trying to get the full meaning of it, I'm not saying you eat burritos, I'm saying, do you eat burritos?
Do you?
Just
okay.
to be 100% clear here, right?
Okay, okay.
So now how would you answer that? How would you do that question in English?
So I would say, yes, I eat burritos.
Okay, so now how would you say that in Spanish?
Sí, como los burritos.
Perfecto. Okay. ¿Bebes la cerveza?
Do you drink beer? Sí, bebo la cerveza.
¿Lees las noticias?
Do you read the news? Sí, leo las noticias.
¿Corres en el parque?
Do you run in the park? No, corro en el parque.
Technically, you should say no 2 times. No?
No.
It's like in English when we say no, I don't, right? We have 2 negative words there.
Okay, so I would say no and then no running. Okay.
It's okay if you just say no corro en el parque, right? But technically you would say no corro.
Okay.
So like the first no is like saying no, the second is like saying don't, right?
I do not run. Got it.
No corro en el parque would just be like, hey, do you run in the park? I don't run in the park, right?
Yeah.
It's fine. It's 100%. ¿Tomas el café?
Do you drink coffee? Sí, tomo el café.
¿Ordenas la pizza por teléfono?
No ordeno la pizza por teléfono.
¿Deseas unas vacaciones?
Sí, deseo unas vacaciones.
¿Bailas la salsa?
No bailas la salsa. No bailo la salsa.
Good catch, nice. ¿Cocinas bien?
No cocino bien.
¿Esquías en la montaña?
Sí, esquío en la montaña.
¿Viajas frecuentemente?
No viajo frecuentemente.
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 ¿Reservas un hotel pronto?
Do I reserve a hotel
So remember,
now,
the
pronto?
question is technically just, and it may be a little overboard, but I'm not saying you, I am